ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासति गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Prabhu, if I'm clicking on my document, that Zoom window is getting closed. What should I do?
You need to do the share, right? There is a
Mottam document is like 12-15 pages.
Hold on.
Those are like my notes.
Daddy, do you know where Thomas phone? Phone.
Should I log in into phone?
No, what you are trying to do, Mataji? You want to share some
Trying to
document?
refer to my notes? No, not sharing. Referring to my notes.
Okay. Yeah, you can open. That's not a problem. You can still, we can see you.
You can see me now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So today's topic I chose from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto. The title is Bhakti Yoga is superior to other yogas. So this is third canto. This is teachings of Lord Kapila to Mother Devahuti. And when we think about Bhakti Yoga, what is the first thought comes to our mind when we think about devotional service? It's open question to audience. Can anyone think about like what is that comes to your mind?
Are you saying what devotional service means?
Yes, like what is the thought comes to you when we talk about devotional service?
I mean, serving the instructions of Guru and Krishna.
Hari Hari, that's nice. Anyone else?
Kirtan.
Hari Hari. So, I mean, like the famous verse, like we hear, like, you know, Anya Bhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanavritam, Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam, Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate. Or we think about 9 process of devotional service, or we think about, you know, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, like that, right? I mean, like these are all connects us in Bhakti Yoga. So what is Bhakti Yoga actually? So here we see from Bhagavad Gita 9.34 and 18.65. 9.34 Lord says that Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaj Mam Namaskuru Mam Ivasyasya Yuktaivam Atmanam Mata Parayanaha. So we know this, like, Lord is saying, revealing his mind to us, saying that engage your mind always in me, thinking of me, become my devotee, offer my obeisances to me, worship me, and completely absorbed in me. This way you will surely come to me. So Lord is giving assurance here. And same way in 1865 also, he speaks about same instructions he's giving here. But here he is promising that this confidential knowledge he's sharing with his friend Arjuna, because Arjuna happens to be in Dasya Ras, and he's a very close friend of Lord Krishna. So let's see how Bhakti Yoga is superior to other yogas. And as we know, just I want to briefly introduce the pastime of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. And that in the first Manvantara, when Swayambhu Manu and Satyarupa were instructed by Lord Brahma to increase the progeny, they had 3 daughters and 2 sons, Devahuti, Prasuti, and Akuti. And 2 sons are Priyavrata and Uttanpad. And when Devahuti grown to be a beautiful princess, they were looking for a suitable husband for her. And Kardama Muni is son of Brahma. He manifested from Brahma with 10 other munis. And Lord Brahma created him to increase the progeny in this universe. So Devahuti heard the glories of Kardama Muni from Sage Narada. And she instantly liked him, and she wanted him to be her husband. And Kardama Muni performed yajna, tapasya for 10,000 years. And Lord was pleased with him, and he appeared and gave him a boon that soon, he'll be getting married to a suitable person, that is Devahuti. And Lord explains everything, that, how in 2 days Swayambhu Manu with Shatarupa, with his wife and with his daughter will come, and there will be a marriage performed. So as Lord predicted, Kardama Muni and Devahuti marriage performed very pompously. And then at the time of the marriage, Kardama Muni tells Swayambhu Manu, because Swayambhu Manu is like the king of the mankind, first king of this universe. And he tells him that, once Devahuti begets the children, then he will live to renounce his life. So that was accepted and understood by the Devahuti and her family. And after some time, we see that how Devahuti performed her services to Kardama Muni. She being a princess, she's from a royal family with so much opulence, but she has performed all services to Kardama Muni by herself. She did not take help from anyone. And she dedicated her life with so much devotion to Kardama Muni. She respected, given one point attention to Kardama Muni's needs and things like that, because he was performing his services to the Supreme Lord. So this way, so many years have passed, and Devahuti had become very frail and weak, and she was looking, like a skeleton or like that. There was no beauty in her. She was the most beautiful princess. They say that one time when she was playing on her terrace, there was this Gandharva, Chitraratha, was flying above her palace and saw her and fell down from his uh, aeroplane. So that was the beauty of her. And here, by serving Kardama Muni, she lost luster, beauty, everything. So by seeing her, Kardama Muni was very pleased with her services, and he wanted to give her a love of Godhead. But Devahuti was wanted to, like, she was not happy to get the love of Godhead because she didn't enjoy the life. So she wanted to have the kids. So she prays to Kardama Muni to have children. So Kardama Muni understands her mind and then accepts her. And he creates a mystic aerial mansion, 7-floor building, which can float in the air. So they go around and she gets her beauty back by, taking bath in the Bindu Sarovar. And so then they come back to their hermitage, and Devahuti is blessed with 9 daughters. After that, Kardama Muni wants to leave the home, but Devahuti is not happy because she wants to, because she laments. She says to Kardama Muni that I have daughters who will be married and given away, and I will be left alone. For a woman, it is they need to be sheltered by husband, then by son, and by guru. So if you leave to the forest, then who will take care of me? So please bless me as son. So that's how Lord Kapila takes birth to Kardama Muni and Devahuti. After some time, Kardama Muni leaves for forest to practice renounced order of life. Devahuti here doesn't lament after Kardama Muni leaves the home, but she laments that she lost a very golden opportunity to associate with a devotee of the Lord, and she did not learn the purpose, how to perfect her life. So she laments that she wasted her life in just not utilizing this human life. So she approaches Lord Kapila and she asks him 7 questions. So we are going to discuss these 7 questions, what they are. And this is from 3rd canto, from chapter 25th to 32 chapters. This is all, like 8 chapters are here, where there is a conversation, the teachings of Lord Kapila to Mother Devahuti, and we can see how Lord is instructing Mother Devahuti and mood of Mother Devahuti. So the 7 questions of Devahuti are, first question is, she says that I am bewildered by your Maya. Please dispel my illusion. So she's requesting the Lord that, because she has spent her life, when she had the chance to get the love of Godhead, she requested Kardama Muni to have children. So then second question she's asking Lord Kapila, please explain me how bhakti is attained easily. And then third question she's asking about process of jnana. And then fourth question she's asking about process of yoga. Fifth question is path of bhakti in detail. Like, she already knows what is bhakti in a second question, but she wants to know more details, how, paths and other details about bhakti. She has a desire, this strong desire to know bhakti in detail. Sixth question is nature of the time. And seventh question is the continual birth and death of the jivas, because she's disturbed by that. So here we see the first question is, when Mother Devahuti is asking, I am bewildered by Maya, please dispel my illusion. So Lord is here explaining, answer to that is that by performing there is a yoga system which relates to the Lord and the individual soul, meant for ultimate benefit of the living entity, which gives the detachment to the all happiness and distress in this material world. If one performs that kind of a yoga, then he attains the he'll be like bereft of this illusion. He will not be troubled by Maya. So here Lord Kapila explains about Adhyatmika Yoga. So the yoga which is consist of Sankhya, Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. He gives a solution to her. And then he speaks about the superiority of Bhakti Yoga, and he talks about the characteristics of the devotee. So Lord Kapila speaks about Sankhya philosophy is that, it's an analytical knowledge that gives one to distinguish matter and spirit. So once you understand what is matter and what is spirit, then your fog is cleared from your eyes, that you can see a clear picture. So that's how that will culminate into bhakti. So we see in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 3 also, in purport, Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna that Sankhya Yoga is analysis of matter and spirit. Actually, it is analytical study of material elements. So analytical study of nature of spirit and matter, that is the subject matter, one can speculate and understand by experimental knowledge and philosophy. So actually, Lord Kapila propounds this Sankhya Yoga as actual Bhakti Yoga. And there is, we all know that there is an atheist Kapila also. So we should not be mistaking him for Lord Kapila. And when we see the yoga ladder, coming to the yogas, we see there is a Karma Kanda, Sakarma, Nishkarma, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So let's see what is this all yogas about. So in Karma Kanda, one is encouraged to regulate his sense gratification. And that brings one onto the platform of religion, he can follow a dharma, and this purifies him and purifies the practitioner, whoever is performing karma yoga. It brings the detachment from the knowledge he gets, that by gradually associating with reading Vedas or associating with devotees. So he's exposed to jnana side or upasana side. Then by performing sacrifices, yajnas, and having faith in shastras, he develops a little bit higher knowledge. But he actually works for fruitive, his actions are fruitive activities are there. Like he expects that, whatever he's doing, he needs to be getting the happiness or satisfaction from it, like that. And Sakama Karma, one understands that, transcendence is the goal, and then that whoever is performing, whoever is performing Sakama Karma Yoga, he gets purification and he attempts to give away his fruits of labor. So this way he gets detachment slowly, with the worldly things. And Nishkama Karma, we know that, all attachment to the fruitive activities are given up, but he's still here attached to the work itself in this Nishkama Karma Yoga. So Jnana Yoga is one becomes detached from action and the fruit of action too. And Ashtanga Yoga, we know that, 8 limbs of yoga. We'll speak in detail about it later. So when a yogi in Ashtanga Yoga, how from Jnana Yoga, he elevates to this meditation. So that's how he gets into the Ashtanga Yoga. So what is Bhakti Yoga? Bhakti Yoga is nothing but rendering active service to the Supreme Lord in association of like-minded devotees, especially performed in association of devotees, is helps one to progress or advance on this path. So I will just deeply speak a little bit about Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga, generally people they think about I, me, mine, but they follow scriptures, but they expect some falashruti, whatever the charities or religious activities they do, they feel, okay, by doing this, my forefathers are happy, or my future will be happy, or, some demigods will be happy, like that. There is kind of a thinking. But if a karma yogi performs activities with dharma, keeping in mind, slowly he's progressing. That means it is not bad. Same way with the jnana yoga also, a yogi performs austerities, but he feels very puffed up, and he looks down upon other yogis, he thinks about, those are very low, they are not to his level or something like that. And in Hatha Yoga, we see that, the yogi realizes the Paramatma feature of the absolute truth, and slowly by performing that austerities and being connected with Paramatma, he falls in love or affection towards the Paramatma. So then, he slowly advances. So we see example is sage Vishwamitra there. He was at that realized state, but he fell down. And we come across Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana Yoga is deeper, going deeper into the meditation. And as I explained about all these yogas, they culminate into Bhakti Yoga. That's what Prabhupada explains. And Bhakti Yoga is active participation, rendering service to Lord brings liberation. And one puts directly in association with Lord face to face, because one has already ended his material existence. Because once you accept to do this Bhakti Yoga, the devotional service, automatically you are on a transcendental platform. So you will not be under the clutches of Maya or material nature, because you are under the direct control of the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, here that he's a fool number one, to explain that, how Bhakti Yoga is so much highest on the ladder of these yogas. And the beauty of Bhakti Yoga is this is for everyone, humans can practice, animals can practice, demons can practice, fools can practice, poor people can practice, any age you can practice, anytime you can practice this. So we see examples like, Prahlad Maharaj and Parikshit Maharaj, they were in the womb, and they practiced this Bhakti Yoga. Jada Bharat, he was for society, for the people around him, he was looking like a fool, but he was a realized soul. And we see Sudama was a very poor Brahmin, but he performed a bhakti to Krishna. And Ajamil is practiced in old age. And we see Jatayu, Garuda, they are birds, but they performed. And we see an elephant like Gajendra also performed Bhakti Yoga. Not only that, Bali Maharaj, Prahlad, they are pure devotees of the Lord's, but they are born in a demon's family. And we see Kayadu, Mandodari, they were wives of demons, but still they practiced this Bhakti Yoga. So here in this, Dehuti, after hearing this, she submits humbly to Lord Kapila, saying that I'm a woman with less intelligence. How can I understand all this? So here we see that the nature of Devahuti is that she's very humble. There is so much submission in her questions, in her inquiry, and she's not considering herself to be superior, because Supreme Lord is her son, and she's accepting herself, saying that, she's not intelligent. So in Bhakti Yoga, we see that humility plays a very important role. The more we feel humble, the more we are advancing on this path. We see a lot of times Prabhupada has expressed, like, in his dealings with his disciples, when sometimes Prabhupada used to ask them to read a Krishna book or something, and then Prabhupada used to say that this is not I have written, this is written by Krishna. Or, he never took the credit for doing all that. And then so much humility. And sometimes I was reading this What is the Difficulty book by Shrutakirti Prabhu. And in one of those pastimes, he writes that after giving a lecture, Prabhupada used to ask his disciples, once he is back into his room, he used to ask them, hey, how was the lecture today? Was it good? Like that. I mean, like, he's such an advanced devotee, but you see that how humble he was. He never took credit for his performing this task, where at the age of 70, he traveled around the world 14 times in 12 years and wrote 81 books which were translated. Day and night, we see that how Prabhupada was like performing this devotional service. So after hearing this, Mother Devotee wants to know. So Lord Kapila speaks about the characteristics of the devotees. It is, there's a famous verse, it is Titikshasvaha Karunikaha Sruddhaha Sarvadehinam Ajata Satrava Shanta Sadhava Sadhu Bhushana. So here Lord Kapila is explaining how a devotee or a yogi or a sadhu is. So sadhu is like a tolerant, merciful, friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. So Prabhupada is explaining here in this purport, saying that, who is real sadhu is. So we see that a sadhu is an enlightened person in devotional service, and he has this compassionate nature in him. That, when he's looking around the people, he sees that all are wasting their human life, because which is supposed to be performed in devotional service. So he takes the pain to travel all the places, like how Prabhupada has traveled, and we see Narad Muni also travels all around this universes, planets, to give this Krishna Bhakti or Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti to others. Sometimes we see that how while performing, Haridas Thakur was beaten in 22 marketplaces, and Nityananda was hit by Jagai and Madhai. So we see that how compassionate nature that this sadhu has. He tolerates it. Sometimes people, they use bad language also, but still they tolerate, because they're not on this material platform where they're thinking that, this their words are not affecting them, because they know what is the highest charity or highest good they are doing to the mankind. But same time, they are not arrogant. They are very compassionate. And now coming to the second question, Mother Devotee is asking, please explain how bhakti is attained. So Lord Kapila is explaining that bhakti is beyond the modes. You can get bhava bhakti or spontaneous bhakti. Like, when, Lord really likes when one, offers services with emotions and affections. Because we see that when, the prayers like by Gajendra, Mother Kunti, Bhishma, or Brahma, all these prayers by exalted devotees, we see that they have a mood, they have emotions. So with that, when they're offering, Lord is really pleased, because Lord is like self-satisfied, but he is expecting this kind of a relation because he wants a reciprocation between him and the devotees. And we see that how chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita describes devotional service as the topmost and the most confidential yoga. I mean, I mean, if you see that bhakti yoga can be performed anytime, as I explained, like if one is too old, he cannot perform asanas, he cannot do any other things. But for a person who's getting older or younger, he has feelings, and there is loving feelings are there in everyone's life throughout their life, whether they are a young child or they are old 70 or 50, or they always have this loving feelings towards others. So when this bhakti, this bhakti is like a science, when we channel this towards those, channel those loving feelings towards Lord, then automatically, we are pleasing Lord, and we are being pleased ourselves in return. And beauty of bhakti yoga is like we can perform 24 hours a day, but we cannot perform asanas, 24 hours a day. So in this, Lord Kapila explains about who's a pure devotee. He says that the one who is attached to the activities of devotional service always engages in the service of the lotus feet, and never desires to become one with the Lord. So we see these sometimes, how this Mayavadis or impersonalists, they wants to merge into the Lord. So like that, we see that. So, but a devotee doesn't aspire for that. So Lord Kapila also suggests that, those who cannot come to the Bhava Bhakti or Prema Bhakti stage or the spontaneous stage, they can do Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So we all are doing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And now question 3, process of Jnana, here she's asking a third question. So here Kapila Muni, Lord Kapila explains about the analysis of the matter and spirit. So Lord Kapila describes about Sankhya, like, Prakriti, Purusha and elements like that, and how this develops into the Virata Rupa, like how one yogi meditates upon the universal form of the Lord, in Jnana Yoga. And sometimes we see that, people giving explanation that, these trees and are like hairs or the bones of the Lord. I mean, like because they cannot directly perceive the form of the Lord, so they meditate on these material elements. And sometimes, the Lord body is compared as, the feet are like Shudras, I think the hands are like Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are like thighs, and Brahmanas are like head of the Lord. And so further, Lord Kapila explains that, in this Jnana Yoga, that Purusha, Prakriti and Jiva desires, like he has material desires, and Purusha sanctions. Purusha is Lord, he sanctions, and Prakriti facilitates. So we see that, like we have all studied periodic table, that how material scientists or PhD research holders, they study the characteristics of the material elements which are available, like, elements like water, earth, or, anything. But the problem is they don't include God in this process. Whereas Lord Kapila is explaining about the Sankhya Yoga with material elements is in connection with Supreme Lord. So we see the detailed concept about Sankhya in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's a spiritual analysis of matter or the universe in relation to God, as everything that is emanating from Lord only. So this is actually a devotional Sankhya. And so we see here in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, also in Dhyana Yoga, also Krishna speaks that, Yoginam api sarvesham gatenantara atmana shraddhavan bhajate yamam same yuktatamo mataha. So he says that, and of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So here we see how Prabhupada explained bhajate word, bhajate imam, bhajate, that Prabhupada explains that it has a root in the verb bhaja, and that bhaja means used when there is a need of service. So, but we cannot translate that into worship. Like Prabhupada says that worship word is not the same like a bhaja. So worship is what? Worship means to adore, to show respect, and to honor a worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for Supreme Personality of Godhead. So why we are here, because we have a propensity to enjoy separately from Lord. That is the cause for our fall down from his abode. But Lord is very compassionate and merciful. That's why he comes and reclaims this conditioned souls back to Godhead by giving this Sankhya Yoga or this other yogas, and then Bhakti Yoga. Especially Bhakti Yoga is like a elevator taking us directly to the, surpassing all the yogas. And then you are directly connected with Bhava Yoga, Bhava, and then Prema, and then you are directly you can be on the spiritual platform with Lord. So now the question 4 is process of yoga. Mother Devavati is asking about process of yoga. So Devavati here, she already understood what is bhakti, and she knows that bhakti yoga is the best. But she's asking this question so that she can be more fixed on this. Like suppose example, when I want to buy an iPhone, I made up my mind. I know the features about iPhone, but I go to a store. I ask them, can you show me an Android? Can you show me a Samsung? And I will see iPhone also. I will see other things also, but I'll come back to iPhone. The same way here, the Mother Devamurti is also coming back to Bhakti Yoga. She's asking what are the processes. So here in this, Lord Kapila is explaining about Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga has 8 limbs. 8 limbs are yama, niyamas, do's and don'ts. Asanas is postures. Pranayam is like breathing exercise, Recha, Kumbhak, deep inhaling, deep exhaling, or keeping prolonged breathings, And Pratyahara is like controlling of mind from distractions and focusing on one object. Dharana is that yogi meditates on overall meditations on the overall form of the Lord. So what is the difference? A yogi closes his eyes and meditates on Lord in dharana stage. And we can say, why do we have to do, why are we discussing about dharana here? We are the yogis, we are bhakti yogis. So we can see that, whereas we can see that a yogi in dharana stage or dhyana stage is meditating on the form of the Lord with his eyes closed. But a devotee meditates on Lord by keeping his eyes open. Example, we attend Mangalarti, we attend Bhagavatam class, we do service like, cooking, making garlands, or mopping, cleaning, anything we do. So for a devotee, smaranam is archanam, or hearing, or engaging the senses. And then, the devotee engages his senses, his intelligence, and his mind. Mind is like gopis, how they have engaged their mind in Lord's Krishna's pastimes. They were always meditating on Lord Krishna. So the next stage is dhyana. Dhyana is like more intensified and deeper meditation. For a devotee, it is like meditating on individual limbs of the Lord. And final stage is samadhi, that final goal where, you're ready to leave this body. The yogi is ready to leave this body. And sometimes, they raise their kundalini and they pushes their soul out through their top of the skulls. And so at that time, their consciousness is fixed when they are leaving this body. So we see that King Dhritarashtra, when he went to forest, when he was leaving his body, there was a fire arose from his head, and that fire caused the whole forest was burnt, and Gandhari and Mother Kunti also, they left their bodies in that fire. So we see that how a samadhi is being attained by yogi here. So now the important thing is, what is the limb of the Lord a devotee aspires to take darshan of? This is the most important, what is that devotee does? So Prabhu, can you show that lotus feet of the Lord Krishna? And that verse 3.28, 21, 28th chapter, 21st verse, 3rd canto, 20th chapter, 21 verse. Prabhu, okay, yeah, you got it. Okay. Okay. Hey, how do I go back? Okay. Sanchintayed Bhagavatas Charanaravindam Vajran Kushadhvaja Saroruhalanjanadhyam Uttunga Rakta Vilasannaka Chakravala Jyotsna Birahat Mahad Hridayandakaram. Okay. How do I minimize your...
You want to stop the share?
No, not that. No, I want to go back to my notes. Yeah. Your screen is big, Prabhu, on my laptop. So here we see that a devotee should first concentrate his mind on the Lord's lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of thunderbolt, a goat, a banner, and a lotus. The splendor of their beauty, ruby nails, resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart. So here we see that, Prabhupada is starting the purport with Mayavadis, says that because one is unable to fix his mind on the impersonal existence of absolute truth, one can imagine any form he likes and fix his mind on that imaginary form. But such a process is not recommended here. Imagination is always imagination and results only in further imagination. So we see here how Prabhupada is strongly condemning the Mayavadi practice, because they don't have a form, so they imagine any form in their mind and they meditate. But what is it resulting into? It is resulting into imagination only. So that is a useless. We have Lord here and Lord's form here. We have Lord and Lord's form here. So what is the difference between a devotee and that yogi? So we see that a devotee, concentrates his mind on Lord's lotus feet, for a longer time. He practices on that. And we see that, how Prabhupada in 1975 in Nairobi, he spoke on this verse. And Prabhupada said that our feet and Lord's lotus feet are different. Lord's lotus feet are marked with, we see that, there is a thunderbolt, gourd, banner, and lotus. And our feet doesn't have anything. And Prabhupada talks about hell, saying that, one time Prabhupada was in London, and there was the splendor effulgence which is coming through the nails of the Lord is like a, giving the light to the whole, a devotee can see that the effulgence coming from the lotus feet. So Prabhupada saying that for this planet, we have sun, which is like emanating the light. So one time Prabhupada is in London, and it was like, I think it was a winter, and there was no sun out. So Prabhupada said, this is hell, because there was no sun. And then we see that this light, the moonlight effulgence, which is coming, when a devotee takes darshan of that, it destroys the whole ignorance from his heart. So we see that how Lord's lotus feet are like a soothing ray of moon, rays of moon, that, giving some peace, solace to the eyes of the devotee. I mean, like, it is so, just imagine that lotus feet of the Lord and meditate on it. It is so beautiful aspect that a devotee really enjoys when he sees the Lord. That is how our dhyana should start, from the lotus feet. They say that you have to slowly, gradually progress towards the Lord's face. You directly can't go reach Lord's face. So you have to first go lotus feet. You spend more time actually. And then you gradually progress to his calf, then his thighs, then his waist, navel, then his abdomen, then his chest, then his neck, then his face, and in the face, then, his eyebrows. There is so much beautiful description about the limbs and body parts of the Lord in Bhagavatam, explained so beautifully. His smile, his nose, his lips, his eyes. So everything is so beautiful. And so here we see that in dhyana stage, when a yogi is performing this meditation on the limbs of the Lord, so he gets attracted to the Lord sometimes. And, there is a love and affection arises in his heart. And then he becomes a bhakti yogi. From a dhyana yogi to he becomes a bhakti yogi. So otherwise, sometimes what happens is a dhyana yogi, even though there is some affection and love in his heart, but he thinks that what am I doing here? Why am I wasting my time here? I have to look for liberation. So he just comes out of that, and then, he concentrates on the liberation. And we see that how Mayavadis are unable to fix on the impersonal existence of absolute truth. I mean, like, eventually all these Mayavadis, all these yogis, whether there is a karma yogi, jnana yogi, dhyana yogi, whoever is, they all are coming to connect with Lord Krishna, Lord anyway. But there is a slow, gradual process. But Bhakti Yoga, Lord Kapila is explaining that, it is the easiest way. And so Prabhupada says that, when there is like, Prabhupada gives an example of Om Ajnana Timirandasya or Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Like, Prabhupada says that, why should we remain in darkness when Lord's body itself is so effulgent that it brings the light into our lives? So it's like a Yasya Prabhavo Jagadanda Koti, like thousands of suns, like, how Brahma Samhita glorifies Lord's effulgence, how it is. So we see that. And now fifth question, path of bhakti. I think path of bhakti, she's asking here, what are the paths? So Lord Kapila is explaining various classes of bhakti, characteristics of pure bhakti, angas of bhakti, dangers of offenses in this. So we see classes of bhaktis like tamasika, rajasika, sattvika. Here we need to understand that bhakti is not contaminated or influenced by 3 modes, but a practitioner's bhakti is performed in 3 modes. So suppose if one is seeking name, fame, adoration, then he is performing bhakti in the mode of passion, that is rajasic. And if one is seeking peace, liberation, then he's performing in the mode of goodness, that is sattvic bhakti. And if one is performing revengeful bhakti, I mean, like bhakti is like you can do it for multiple purposes. Like, here one is trying to seek revenge towards others. So he's doing this bhakti, which is like with the mode of ignorance, tamasika bhakti. So what do we aspire? We aspire to get Uttama Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti, or pure devotional service, or Nirguna Bhakti. So for this, we know, as I mentioned in the beginning, Anya Abhilashita, Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi, Anavritam, Anukulyena, Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Ruttama. So here, that means, Rupa Goswami explains that one should render devotional service to the Supreme Lord favorably, without any material profit or gain, or, mental speculation or philosophical speculation. So this is what pure devotional service. So we need to aspire to get this bhakti from Lord. So, and Rupa Goswami also explains that this is unalloyed devotional service, like it is free from all material contamination. And what are the obstacles in performing bhakti? Sometimes what happens is like, we see someone performing nicely deity worship, but if he's offending somebody, then it is like offering ashes into the oblation. So, or, a neophyte devotee is worshipping Lord nicely with proper paraphernalia, but he does not respect fellow being or a devotee, because he doesn't recognize that other person has a presence of Lord, so he doesn't care. So he doesn't see that. So those are kinds of offenses while performing bhakti we end up coming in. So example was like, I came across is that, sometimes in South India, they say that DT may give you boon, but Pujari blocks it. Because sometimes this Pujari is so proud that, because he's connected with deities, that, he looks down on others, saying that, oh, whatever, I am so connected, so close to the deities or my spiritual master, or I am the expert in my management, like, I am the most important person in the congregation. Like that, if that person is thinking, then, he's looking down on others who doesn't have that privileges. So then thereby he's committing a lot of offenses. So we need to be very careful while performing, because bhakti doesn't come that easily. So we have to be like, very careful while performing. And everyone has some services. It is not that someone is like really at the low stage. Someone may be sweeping, someone may be on the altar, some may be dressing, some may be doing aarti, someone may be washing the pots, but they all are doing service. There is, Lord doesn't see the difference or distinguishes that, the pujari is like highest on the platform, he's close to me. So no, all services are same, but it is the mood on which we are performing those services matters. So we should not become judgmental. And this bhakti is between Bhagwan and Bhakta, so wherever Lord says that, wherever the devotee is, then I am present there. So he resides wherever the devotee is. So devotees, their life is, full with reciprocation with the Lord. They feed Lord, they chant Lord's name, they invite people, they do programs, they publish books. They're constantly absorbed in this process. Like, as I said that, deity worship, sweeping, cooking, or like someone is trying to give books, distributing or helping others to become devotees, dressing like a devotee. All these are like nothing but active actively rendering service. So what is this bhakti yoga actually does? It's like a process. When you eating is a process, but when you eat, you're satisfying your hunger, and that is digesting, and you're getting nourishment. So same way, when we are performing bhakti, that is the highest, but all kleshas are gone and auspiciousness comes. So we see how much benefits are there. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he speaks about mukti, how this impersonalists, they undergo severe austerities, penances to get mukti. But a devotee simply chants Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then he follows 4 regulative principles. He eats remnants from food offered to the Lord. And as soon as he takes all this, his tongue is controlled, his senses are controlled. So he doesn't need to do other penances or austerities. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that asking Lord for mukti is like asking a rich man ashes. So, for example, that there was this story, a woman was carrying a dry wood on her head, and suddenly that bundle fell down. And she was intensely praying to God, saying that, God, please help me, help me, help me. And suddenly God appeared to her, and he asked her, what you want? She said, can you please pick that dry wood bundle and put it back on my head? So that is what happening with the in this world, that everyone is like asking for some desires, material desires to be fulfilled. We want, if we are not married, we want to get married. If we are married, then we want to have a nice job, nice home. We want to, if we don't have those things, we ask for that. If we don't have kids, we ask for kids. We ask for nice bank balance, nice some kind of like a guarantee that tomorrow, I will live peacefully, like some kind of insurance. Those kinds are like asking, like how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj put as ashes, because our Supreme Lord is full of those 6 opulences. He can give anything. He knows our heart. But we have to, he sees that what is good for us. So this is the most important thing, what we need to ask and what we need to refrain from asking. So here, we see in Bhagavad Gita also many yogas are explained, but Lord says that a first class yogi is that who always thinks of Lord and thinks within his heart, thinks of him. He chants all the time. He always remembers. And this way, what happens when he's chanting, like when you close your eyes and you chant Maha Mantra, you immediately see the form of Lord is awakened in your heart. That's what Prabhupada said in one time, that some devotee asked him, Prabhupada, while chanting, can we meditate on the form of the Lord? So Prabhupada said, yes, you can chant and you can meditate on the form of Lord. That is the ultimate goal, that, associating with the Lord. And the names of the Lord, form, his pastimes are non-different from each other. They are all same. So the 6th question is nature of time, how characteristics of the times, Devahuti, Mother Devahuti is asking, and then Lord Kapila is explaining about the eternal time factor, there is no beginning, no end, like that. And then for a devotee, it doesn't matter, because devotee is above this material platform. Because service performed by devotee exists eternally, and Lord also exists eternally, and we also exist eternally. So service is also exists eternally. So everything is eternal. So there is no impact of the time. And the 7th question is continual birth and death of the jivas. So whereas, Lord Kapila is explaining about the continuous birth and deaths of the jivas, why this is happening, because she's very afraid, Mother Devahuti here. So Lord Kapila is explaining that, the process, how a child who suffers in the womb of a mother, and then when he's in the womb, he's praying, and then when he's takes birth, he's having so much suffering. Then as he grows, you know, he has to take care of himself. He learns, goes through all this process. Then he takes care of his family. By taking care of family, he ends up doing so many things, like, you know, cheating, or, you know, earning money by so many in wrong ways. So he'll be like punished, he'll be sent to the hell. So those are the things, like, you know, Lord Kapila is explaining. So the conclusion of is that is Bhakti Yoga is the highest, higher than all other yogas, because the conclusion of Lord Kapila's teaching is that, you know, when one should perform a proper service with like, you know, rendering this service with an intense mood and in association of devotees. That too in association of devotees, like-minded. So that way one can perfect one's life. So this way Devahuti heard from Lord, and she you know, later on performed Bhakti Yoga and left to the Lord's abode, and Lord also left and went to Ganga Sagar. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, please. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Any questions, any comments?
Let's see. So one question, Shuddha Bhakti.
Yes, Mataji.
Devahuti was with Kardama Muni all that time, and she still felt she needed perfection from her son?
No, after Kardama Muni left, then she repented. She regretted that, you know, that she spent life. I mean, like when Kardama Muni was ready to give her love of Godhead, she said, I have some desires.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how she ends up asking him that, you know. So then Kardama Muni understands her mind, because he's a mystic yogi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he knows that her desire. So that's how she says that this place is not convenient, because they were living in hermitage. So so Kardama Muni, with his mystic power, he creates this aerial mansion.
Yeah, that part I know. Yeah, but I didn't realize that she did not.
So no, after Kardama Muni leaves the home, then she asks these questions, because she thinks that she lost a chance. Because when you have a pure devotee, you know, instead of taking his association and benefiting from that, instead of that, she asks for a material gratification, you know, sense gratification. So that's how she regrets, and she approaches Lord Kapila with a submission, you know, saying that I have wasted my life, like, because human life is meant to perfect, right? So she lost that chance. So she was asking Lord Kapila directly, because she knew that Lord Kapila is incarnation of Lord Vishnu, because Sakshat God has come as her son. So, but she did not take advantage of it. She humbly submitted, because just being a son doesn't mean that, you know, you are a mother, doesn't mean that you surpass all the rules and regulations. So she wanted to set an example. So that's how she started approaching and asking questions to Lord Kapila. I hope that answers, Mataji.
Sort of. I mean, in a way, I feel like Devahuti might have been asking questions just like Arjuna was asking questions to Krishna. To someone who's the mother of Lord Kapila himself, does not necessarily not know what the meaning of life is, I would think, right?
No, but you have to understand, they are the first beings in the universe, right? So they are highly, like, you know, on a sattvic mode of like, you know, goodness. So, you know, and they are like God conscious. So you see, even Swayambhu Manu was like considered as they called as Raja Rishi, because
Right.
they have so much opulence, but still they are detached from it. They are
And
engaged.
she herself, who was a princess, did not
Yes,
care for a materially wealthy
exactly.
husband.
Yes.
She valued that the riches that Kardama Muni had was far greater than
Yes.
any material riches she could have. So the fact that she married an older person, but with greater spiritual wealth itself, shows her character in the first place, you know.
Yes, you have to see that because even Kardama Muni was not in a rush to marry or anything. He performed the 10,000 years, the penances, and then he had that, because he knows the purpose of he being created in the universe by Brahma to increase the progeny. So he was looking for a suitable bride for himself. And Lord knows, Lord is present in everyone's heart. Lord knows it. So Lord says when he appears before Kardama Muni that, she's suitable. She has same like thinking like you, like, same mindset like you. She will be helpful in your devotional service. Because sometimes what happens is, if there is no compatibility, then, if husband is trying to be devotee, then, if wife is not having that inclination, then, there is no progress. Or vice versa, if wife is into devotional service and if husband is not, then, there is no progress. But here she is like, both of them had the same mindset. And Lord himself said that, like, as if this is all Leela's, Mataji. So we have to understand that
I
this
know,
is a
yeah, because
pastime.
I'm thinking with
And
the association of Kardama Muni
yes,
himself, she would have been a very elevated person, you know.
she regrets that, and she explains to Kardama Muni also before he leaves the home. She says that, when he was leaving after 9 daughters, she says to him, you know that I am a person in mode of ignorance. I am into sense gratification, but I am in your association. So when a person with a lower mode is associating with a person who's in a higher mode, sometimes they rub some things, right? So I haven't. So at least I haven't taken that benefit, that from you. So please help me now, that at least now I need to get a son, because you are going, you go. She was not objecting of he leaving the house. Yeah, she was ready, and after he leaves, she did not even lament for his gone. She was prepared mentally. Here we can understand as a woman's heart, like because they say that woman's heart is like more compatible towards bhakti, like that's why we see more women are into movement than men. I mean, it is just like because their heart is so soft, they can melt down. Prabhupada also said in some of the lectures that women are more prone to easily accept this Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, and yeah, that's true.
Well, somebody's asking some question. Okay. If no questions, then maybe Advika, can you chant Narsingha prayer?
Yes, Mataji is come.
I forgot to chant Jai Radha Madhava.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Praladadaine. Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha.
हिरण्यकशिपूर्वक्षः
tum kalaye
शीलकानकालाय
ito nashemo parato nashemo
यतो नरसिंहो परतो नरसिंहो
yato yato yami tato nashemo
यतो यमी ततो नरसिंहो
nashemo hridaye nashemo
नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो
Narasimhamadem Sharanam Prapade
नरसिंहमादिं शरणं प्रपद्ये
Tava Karakamala Nakamadbhuta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuvringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
हिरण्यकशिपो धनुप्रेन्धा हरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
Jaya Nrsimha Dev Jaya Nrsimha Dev Jaya Nrsimha Dev Jaya Nrsimha Dev
Jayanti.
जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad Jaya Bhakta Prahlad
Jaya
भक्ता प्रहलाद जय भक्ता प्रहलाद जय भक्ता प्रहलाद जय भक्ता
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol
Nitai Gaura
हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि
Gaura.
Vinashana Shingadev Bhagwan ki
Jai.
Jai Bhakt Prahlad Maharaj ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Thank you, Advika.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everybody.
Hare Krishna, thank
Hare
you.
Krishna. Thank you.